We are only at week 3, and already our fantasy rosters are being decimated by injuries, as we can see there. Poor Joey B out for season. We're going to have a look at the injury report on today's Fantasy 5, bringing you 5 fantasy morsels of goodness for your consideration, mainly focusing on some streaming options for quarterback, tight end, and defense. Let's look at the injuries first, though, Ed. I mean, Joey B, we spoke about it enough at this stage, probably for your liking. Out for 3 months, essentially the season, really. Jaden Daniels was touch and go earlier in the week with a knee sprain, didn't practice Friday, so it wasn't looking good. And about half an hour before we started recording, he has been ruled out. JJ McCarthy out with an ankle injury. Justin Fields ruled out with concussion. Brock Purdy out because of his toe and shoulder injuries. Don't know quite how he's managed that, both ends of his body, silly boy. But that's his 5 quarterbacks out from last week. Say a couple of those in Burrow and Daniels especially were perhaps early-ish picks in your redraft leagues and cornerstones of your rosters as well. Aaron Jones, IR with hamstring injury, and Tucker Kraft. I think everyone woke up, UK time, woke up worried that Tucker Kraft was potentially going to be out after his breakout game. Turns out that it's not quite as bad as we thought it was going to be, but time recording, we are not sure of his availability for week 3. I have in one of my Superflex Dynasty leagues where I was really happy with my roster. So I had Jaden Daniels and Justin Fields at QB and Superflex, and I picked up Emma Krug-Buka in rookie drafts, and one of my running backs was Aaron Jones. That's now I'll take the loss on that one.
You take the hit.
Any of those have hit you seriously in your leagues, or have you escaped some of that, other than breaking your heart with Joey B?
Yeah, obviously Joey's broken my heart. I've actually only got him in one of my lineups, so it's not been that bad. I did have to laugh this week when somebody offered me Burrow in a trade and said, "Come and get your guy." I said, "Yeah, maybe next year." I'm not that stupid. So no one's hit me terribly this week. I've got a bit of Egbuka. But hopefully he'll start.
That's put a little bit shy on it, isn't it? Come and get you. Look at this great deal I'm offering you, your injured guy. Having a look at some QB options, though, if we are in a bind, which will be many people this week. Who've we got, Ed?
Yeah, a few to look at. Let's start off with Caleb Williams, someone who we spoke about a lot pre-season, and he is quite highly rostered, 67% rostered, so he might not be available, but worth having a look. I mean, the Bears haven't looked great in real life, but Williams is QB 10 after week 2, and he's got the Cowboys this week, who've allowed the 3rd most passing yards after 2 weeks. Only 33% are starting Caleb Williams as it stands, and I think that should be higher this week, as he's put up decent numbers against the Vikings and the Lions in the first couple of weeks. So if he's on your bench, think about starting him this week. Aaron Rodgers is somebody to have a look at, as much as it pains me to say it now. He's a Steeler. He was an idiot anyway. Only 35% rostered, and only 14% are starting him as it stands. This week could be the week to start him against the Patriots, who have allowed the most passing yards against across the first 2 weeks. I expect at least a couple of passing touchdowns this week from him, and a potential for passing that 25-point fantasy barrier. So have a look at Aaron Rodgers. And we mentioned him on the main show, Jake Browning. At the start of the week, he was 0% rostered. Now he is up to 32% rostered, so still available in a number of leagues. I mean, as he proved last week, he will get you points. He's going to make the most of those weapons that Joey B's left behind. And he's one of the better backup quarterbacks. And I think, over the long term, he's got the potential maybe for top 20 in fantasy. Just beware of the interceptions.
Can I throw into the mix Mr. Russell Wilson as well?
He would love you to do that.
Oh, he would, absolutely. Currently 26% rostered. Big game last week with 30-odd points as well. You've got the Chiefs, which isn't necessarily the most appealing one, but they've not looked like the Chiefs of old. So that connection he is brewing with neighbours, I think, really is something to watch going forwards. And I wanted to mention him just because we used him on the graphic at the beginning of the show as well. So, to throw him in there. Aaron Rodgers is an interesting one, isn't he? I think he's no longer matchup proof at all, but will have his weeks where it makes sense, especially with DK and Metcalf. I mean, quarterbacks decimated for this week. Last week, we're having the same conversation about tight ends, weren't we? Obviously, Tucker Craft potentially in that mix as well. So before we look at some streaming tight end options, please do take a moment to give a subscribe, a like, and why not pop a share as well before getting involved in the comments below to tell us which of the players we've spoken about so far you're interested in, or if there are any quarterbacks, tight ends, or defenses you're going to be streaming this week. For my streaming tight ends, though, Ed, we did this the other day. I'm going to play the hits again a little bit. I mean, Javon Johnson, tight end 2, 11 targets week 1, 9 in week 2. Yet it's still available in 1 in 5 leagues. Clearly, people don't want tight end points. I can't understand that, really, considering Mark Andrews still over 90% rostered, TJ Hawkinson over 90% rostered. Go and check, because chances are, if you're in multiple leagues, he might be available somewhere. Harold Fannin is clearly part of the Browns' plan A rather than waiting for Njoku just to move over completely. If you're streaming tight ends, he could have a safe floor against the Packers this week, who, as good as they are, have given up the 5th most points to tight ends over the first 2 weeks. And context of last year as well, 10th most over the whole of 2024. So there could be some points for him to be had there. Zach Ertz, you mentioned on the main show, currently the tight end 3. And he's available in a quarter of leagues. Once again, people just don't want any points on tight end, clearly through ignoring these players. Unfortunately, when I've looked at places where I could do with picking up a tight end, where I am craftless, kittleless, or giving up on Mark Andrews this week, they're all taken up in most of our leagues. So Hunter Henry is a player that is a bit more widely available, only 41% rostered. Tight end 22 in fantasy points per game, but is a decent tight end streaming option this week because Steelers have allowed the 7th most points per reception and the 12th most fantasy points per game to tight ends so far. Drake May spreading his targets around, so Henry is volatile. So he's not a safe pick whatsoever, but is one that could pay off. And if you're scouring the waiver wire, they're the risks you're taking at tight end. So Hunter Henry has a more probable route than several, I think, in that category. Obviously, you've spoken about Zach Ertz. Are you still amazed it's still available in a quarter of leagues?
Yeah, as you said, none of our leagues, no competitive leagues. But yes, it amazes me. I mean, Zach Ertz, Juwan Johnson, I think look pretty nailed on to be top 10 tight ends at the moment as it stands. And Harold Fannin has been the big surprise, you would say. But yeah, any of those are decent options this week.
If you stream your defenses week to week, which, as we say every week, is the correct way to play, in our opinion, and it's time to get defensive, give us 3 options this week off the waiver wire, Ed.
Yeah, it's still difficult early days with defenses. So it's a little bit of a stab in the dark at the moment. I've got 3 options for you. Starting off with the Jags, who are ranked 4th at this early point in the season after a couple of steady weeks. They've got the Texans this week, who've looked anemic on offense so far. And as you can see, the Jags are only 4% rostered, so definitely worth having a look if they're available. I'm going to predict double figures in week 3 after they got 12 points in week 1 and 8 points in week 2. So have a look at the Jags. The Colts, they had a huge week 1 against the Dolphins with 14 points, and that boosted their rostership up to 22%. They have the Titans this week, and their rookie QB, Cam Ward, who's struggling to find his receivers in the first couple of weeks. No interceptions yet from Cam Ward, but this feels like it could be ripe for a couple this week if he starts to force things. I'm going to predict a pick 6 for the Colts this week. And then the Cardinals, a bit of a punt. They're the higher rostered out of the 3. But the Cardinals defense did put up big points against the Panthers last week. I know only the Panthers, but they've got the 49ers this week. I mean, the 49ers looked pretty good under Mac Jones last week, and they'll be under him again. I wouldn't call Mac Jones Mr. Consistent. So, always potentially got a horror week in him, which is why I might consider the Cardinals.
And remember, as well, as we said on the main show, do pay attention to your defenses. I would say, for the example of the Ravens, who I will always bang the drum for, Mr. Roquan Smith and co. But time of recording, they are still in 74% starting
Playing the Lions.
I know. Which is daft, but also the Lions currently being started in 37% of leagues. Now, that will go down. People won't tweet their lineups till Sunday, quite likely. But you shouldn't be playing the Lions or the Ravens defenses. So this is where, if you want to keep them on your bench and you've got a spot to burn because you want to keep hold of them, fair dues, but do look to pivot from those. Finally, then, Ed, our fifth course of this fantasy smorgasbord of fun, we have our DFS Red Hot Picks. So we will be bringing you tomorrow our main DFS show, where we'll be going through a load of different options for you to consider when you're building your roster. We want to give you a little bit of a start for our consideration, though, and we always look at this point at the highest game line. Now, in a week with so many QB injuries, a 50-plus point game line is going to get absolutely hammered on Fantasy Game Day and DraftKings this week. As with many people playing DFS weekend, I'm all over this matchup as well. And although it's projected to be close, Cowboys are only 1.5 point favorites. I'm mostly interested in Dallas, to be completely honest. Both defenses have been poor. So the Cowboys, third most fantasy points to wide receivers, 11th most to running backs, second most to QBs through the first 2 weeks. The Bears, sixth most to wide receivers, fourth most to running backs, and the most points to QB. This will not be a game for defensive purists watching their Sunday slate. Options on there, there's loads of them. We've spoken about DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. Where do you go for that? We'll talk about more on the main show tomorrow. One player who's not on there, I do want to mention, is Jake Ferguson. I think if you are targeting this game, you might have to take risks or go for something a little bit different. So Jake Ferguson at tight end is an option there as well. I'd love to say Colston Loveland, but I'm still not pulling that trigger yet for DFS. I'm sure there will be a bigger game soon. Just doesn't feel like it's going to happen anytime at this point there. So if you are playing DFS over the weekend, if it is on DraftKings, you've got your values there. If you are playing Fantasy Game Day in the UK, please do take a moment to use the promo code THFF1 if you've not played before to get one free play with your first paid entry. And then reap the rewards when one of those lineups hopefully comes in and wins you some cash money. Well, Ed, that's it. That is our whistle-stop tour through the Week 3 slate, giving some streaming options. Are you optimistic of taking any teams 3-0 this week, or have you already had a couple of defeats on the board?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag across the board, as it always is.
That's why it's nice to do so many leagues, so at least a couple
of exactly. You're always winning one.
We'll be back then tomorrow with our DFS Red Hot Picks. If you're watching this later in the weekend, do have a quick look on the rest of our channel for our other shows for Week 3. But for now, I'm Duned. Do you want to call the lift in?
With pleasure. Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.